I tell you a few words. First of all, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, because it's hard to say in which time zone we are at the moment. My name is Andrzej Schmidt and I'm co-host during this session. I'd like to inform you that you can share your initial presentation while the session is starting if you have it ready. You can take also a snapshot print screen of the session and attach it in your report later.
Perfect.
So my idea was to just open up and then let each of you introduce yourselves. And then I'm going to give some initial remarks about how the idea of the Digital Sustainability Forum came along. It was actually my own idea for a couple of years ago to start this out. So it's very close to my heart, this project. And just say a few words. I don't want to take up too much time, and then basically give the word to each of you, maybe to share a little bit about your own thoughts around the forum and what you got out of it. And then hopefully we can have a discussion that will inspire also the audience. And hopefully we can also learn a little bit from each other.
In terms of who we are missing, I've checked the description of the pre-event 77, and I think we're missing Sarah Polak from Prague AI, Czechia, and Aleksander Tarkowski from Centrum Cyfrowe from Poland.
Excuse me, one more sentence, if you please. You can also have questions from the audience at IGF forum webpage. So I attached the link and chat so you can check if you have already any questions. And we are somehow support you if
so
something happens.
Questions from the audience again?
In Q&A, it is a Q&A and there is a link also.
Yes, and in chat you can find a link where it can happen that there are already some questions for you.
Okay, nothing yet, I see.
Yeah, there are no questions received for any of your administered sessions.
And in the chat box, maybe can one of you raise your hand so I can see how that looks? I'm not so familiar with raise your hand like on the.
No, sorry to say, but people can ask for to take a floor during discussion only through Q&A. So
But
this raising hand is unable.
the panelists can raise the hand, no? Like I'm doing now. Now I'm raising my hand.
Panelists can use raise the hand, but attendees cannot. They can ask the question only via a question and answer feature.
Yes. I'm thinking about the panelists, like Radu, he just raised his hand.
You can have it as panelists. They can use this feature indeed.
So that's a good, and I see, yeah. So that's a good way for me to see that you want to say something.
But how can we raise our hand?
You see, open the chat box.
You just click on participants and you have a button at the end of the list with raise hand. Raise hand.
Ah, okay, yeah, I can see it now.
Mm-hmm.
You can just click there and then I will see it.
Okay. Okay.
Otherwise you can do.
And since we are just about to start, we need to inform you officially that the session is conducted under the UN Code of Conduct rules. It's being recorded and it's also live streamed on the YouTube. Thanks very much. Have a good session.
Thank you.
So it's my great pleasure to officially welcome every one of you. Welcome to our panelists, welcome to our audience. It's a real pleasure for me to be participating today, and hopefully we can facilitate a good discussion. Hopefully also give our audience some insight into Digital Sustainability Forum, and hopefully inspire both the panelists and our audience to continue the dialogue also after this session has ended. I wanted to start by saying a few words about how the idea about Digital Sustainability Forum came around and what our inspirations have been and still are. But before doing that, I would very much like all our panelists to briefly introduce themselves. Who wants to start?
I can begin. Hello, my name is Alek Tarkowski. I head the Centrum Cyfrowe Foundation. We're based in Warsaw, Poland, and we're a civil society think tank working on digital issues.
I can follow. Good afternoon. I am Iris Lippai-Nagy. I am the CEO of MCHEM Hungary, an independent influential organization representing more than 350 members, American, international, and Hungarian investors.
My name is Piotr Miczkowski. I'm managing director at Digital Poland Foundation, privately owned and sponsored NGOs. Our mission is to empower people and especially make Poland as a leading digital hub. We also have a huge initiative called Digital Festival in English, which educates society about the benefits of digitalization and how to enter the digital world and promote tech for society.
Hi, I'm Radu Puciu from Romania. I'm a director of the Aspen Technology and Society program and at the Aspen Institute Romania. And part of this program, we contribute as a platform for dialogue, for multi-stakeholder dialogue in terms of impact of technology in the society. And of course, the Digital Sustainability Forum was one of the big events that we hold, and it's a continuing effort today. Thank you for inviting me here.
And we have Sarah Pollack joining. Oh,
hello.
You joined even twice.
Yes, I joined twice. Can you hear me? Awesome. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties, which is ironic because I actually work in artificial intelligence. So it's one of these things where you talk about technology a lot and then your Zoom connection fails. Thank you so much for having me here today. I have the great honor of being a part of the Aspen Institute Central Europe network. I participate in a lot of various activities. I'm originally an archaeologist, but my dream is to basically make artificial intelligence a multidisciplinary topic for everyone to be able to enjoy, not just a few people, researchers who work on it, but especially the public, because I see it as a next evolutionary stage of our society. And I aim to do this through several projects. One of them is Prague AI, the other is Startup Disrupt and Czech Global, where we basically try to scale innovations in a sensible way in society. And I'm here to talk about some of the results of a roundtable that we had with Aspen about a month ago, where we discussed how important it is to educate society about innovations and new technologies. So I'm here to talk a little bit about that, and also about the work in general and what it actually means to be bringing new radical technologies into our everyday lives. So thank you again for having me. It's a great honor.
Great, and I will give the word again to all of you to talk a little bit more about your own experiences with DSF. But I did want to share a little bit with both you and the audience how this idea came along and what our aspirations were. Those of you who don't know me, I am working for Microsoft as Associate General Counsel, and I'm responsible in Central and Eastern Europe for legal and government relations. So my team is spread in the 32 countries amongst the countries where you're from as well. So Digital Sustainability Forum started really as my idea a few years ago. Artificial intelligence is such a powerful piece of technology, or actually, as our CEO, Nadja Nadella, said, it's not just another piece of technology. It could be the most fundamental piece of technology the human race have ever created. And it does open up a lot of opportunities to improve our societies. More secure driving is one that we all know. We all have the pedestrian alarm in our cars, but also, for example, the prospects of AI in the health sector is so very exciting. But of course, people have concerns, and they have concerns about their privacy, the new opportunities for governments to survey them in a more efficient way. Will they lose their jobs? They have concerns about security. And frankly, we cannot afford to look at the future of AI with uncritical eyes. You know, these concerns are some that we need to take serious. And as humans behave more, as computers become more and behave more like humans, you know, we have to ask ourselves, how do they impact real people? And in Microsoft, we have a saying that ultimately the question is not what computers can do, it's what computers should do. And this is not a question that tech companies should answer or decide. This requires really a broad dialogue amongst a diverse group of people, everything from government, NGOs, companies, academia, organizations, to really come together and discuss what's the right balance between leveraging this new technology and at the same time addressing the concerns and the risks. And frankly, how should the regulation look like? And Digital Sustainability Forum really aims to foster this dialogue. And that's why we decided to partner up with you as key partners to have such discussion and really ultimately come up with ideas and recommendations on, you know, what balance we should strike and how regulation could look. And the key for us in many of these forums and in Microsoft has been really to find some basic principles that we could rely on as, you know, reliability and safety, privacy and security, fairness, inclusiveness, so that the new technology is not only for the elite, but also for everyone and also for the disabled. And then also transparency in how we are training our algorithm and so on, and accountability. You know, somebody has to be accountable for this technology. And we've held a Digital Sustainability Forum in 8 countries so far, including your countries here in the panel. And then, yeah, we have invited some of our key partners in these Digital Sustainability Forums to be here on the panel with us and to share their experiences and plans and hopes for the future. So I'm going to ask my dear panelists to talk for 3-4 minutes each, you know, from your perspective and the perspective of the organization. You know, why did you decide to participate with Microsoft in the Digital Sustainability Forum? You know, why do you think it's important? What were your challenges, opportunities? I'm really excited to be hearing from you. And any one of you who volunteered to start?
I can start. Thank you. Thank you for the question. AmCham, since its foundation in Hungary, has been focusing on the competitiveness of the country. And we have chosen 4 key areas we want to focus on, where we believe that we can make an impact and we can make a change. And these 4 areas are the general business environment, the competitive workforce, innovation, and digitalization. So digitalization in itself is a very important focus area for us. We have different committees and policy task forces working on the topic of digitalization. And on the other hand, Microsoft is a very important member to us. So it became very obvious when we heard about the Digital Sustainability Forum. It is a very important platform to be widened with other stakeholders. So it was really an exciting journey, as we not only included our members who are all impacted by the digitalization itself and AI, but we invited members of the civil society, governmental agencies, academia, to widen up the forum and start the discussions. And it was well before the COVID times. So last year, when we didn't know that digitalization would take such a huge speed, and we believe that we have a role as MCHEM, first of all, to provide the platform for all players in the society, all players who are really impacting and making the decisions on the future, to have an open discussion and to have the opportunity to form and shape the decisions to be made. On the other hand, we also believe that, as you mentioned, development has been very rapid, and it may be one of the most important technologies ever created to impact on human mankind and on the way we live. And there is still a lot of mist around it. And if we just speak about people on the street or even decision makers in companies or in governments, we don't have still a common platform of understanding, a common platform to build our future strategies upon. And we really wanted to be a key player in mobilizing all the efforts and all the key players to come to a common platform and make an important step change in this regard in Hungary.
Thank you very much.
So short, maybe a quick recap of what we did, why we did that in Poland. So together with Centrum Cyfrowe, which is Alek representing, so maybe I hope he will add some his insights to the initiative. You know, as a foundation, we were really focused on AI because our founders, you know, mentioned that, you know, they find a great wisdom in the world, like it's going to be like electricity, it's going to change the whole world, which I think Andrew and G said. So we as a foundation decided, well, let's find a tech which we will promote in Poland, because, you know, there are many new technologies, 5G, blockchain, etc. So we are promoting all of them, but we pick up the one which is, from our perspective, the most impactful. You know, it will change the world dramatically, which is AI. And our mission and why we joined Microsoft, and I was really grateful that we work together, is that Microsoft, for example, was very open for an open discussion. And it's not normal, you know, for companies, especially big ones, where you, when they approach you, they put some requirements, what to do, what not to do, what have to be discussed. So I was really impressed, frankly speaking, that we could invite to our roundtables under the Chatham House rules. So, you know, we're not sticking fingers who's saying what and why. Everyone, even the competitors of Microsoft. So Amazon, you know, we invited from China companies, from every part of the world which has a presence in Poland. So to make the voice the most, I would say, you know, open to everyone, and to have the knowledge from every type of institutions, because we invited academia, universities. So that was amazing achievement. And I think, you know, we as a foundation like have a ongoing, I would say 15, maybe 12 projects, but this is the one of the most I'm impressed. You know, the openness and the ideas were really insightful. I've met tremendous, you know, insightful people from academia. Together we created a report also with Alek. So we created some policies for the government. First of all, Polish government was missing, insight what is happening in digital world. So we as a foundation created several reports like map of Polish AI, map of science in terms of AI. What kind of startups do we have? How many ICT people do we have? Now we just finished up also a report with LinkedIn and Microsoft about AI competences. How many experts do we have in Poland and in Europe? So we created very great, I think, recommendation for government. The government mentioned that, well, they were really curious what we did because there was no reports in that type of field in Poland. So we are still sticking to that. Microsoft now is also a part of a foundation as one of the strategic partners. So we just open up, for example, aipoland.org, a website in English, which promote AI in Poland, but also try to link the companies from other countries and institutions, etc. So I was really, really grateful for the openness. And I'm looking forward for other topics because we were talking about cybersecurity maybe or any other which could bring the attention. So I think it's a really great platform to freely speak about the need of society because I truly believe we are also promoting the concept of Society 5.0. It's a concept from Japan where tech is helping tech is helping society to solve strategic challenges like climate change, for example, right? So we are also promoting tech for society. So that was also a platform for us to underline that, hey, really AI could bring the gap between the villages and cities, or it could bring the disabled people to the workforce. Because there are many tools which could help you bring those people to the workforce. So great platform, great insights, and I'm looking forward for the next report that together we could create. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you want to build on that, Alec?
Sure. I want to make 3 points. First, builds on what Piotr mentioned and is about collaboration and multi-stakeholder discussion, which is the strength of IGF, and I think also has been the strength of our project. So from the perspective of a civil society organization, we sort of very know where our roots are in sort of the civil society sector, but very much need contacts with other sectors and in particular business, because to be honest, that's where all the technological action is. So the opportunity to organize and participate in such a process where we built a space for discussion between civil society organization, business and public administration as the key stakeholders has really been very important. And I think in Poland it has, unique is maybe too strong of a word, but it has been one of the best cases, I think, of this approach, and really successful ones for setting a certain standard of conversation, of reporting it. And I'm very proud of this, that we took part in this project with Piotr. But I want to make another point from my perspective. As much as I appreciate these national level debates, in the future, I would like to see this somehow moving to European level. I'm a firm believer that in Europe, the really significant policy debates happen basically in Brussels. And even more so, I think that there's a very important current idea that Europe can have, so to say, European digital regulation as a sort of export product. We observe this for good and bad. GDPR is an amazing case of, so to say, agenda setting. The fact that it happened in Europe opens a conversation. We might have varied views, whether it's needed, successful, but it has set a certain agenda on debates around data governance. There are probably also cases where not the best European solutions from the perspective of civil society are being promoted. But here I want to speak about the positive ones. And I'm mentioning this because IGF is a global forum. So I just want to underline that I don't think European debate is just for Europeans. I think it's a debate that's crucial sort of for global regulation, and that's why I see its significance. And the last point I want to make is that I'm very happy we're bringing to this debate also self-regulation perspectives. This is how ultimately I understand when a big company like Microsoft defines publicly its principles. This is very important. It's a form of setting a conversation that sometimes may be more important even than defining laws. It determines a lot of things that big players say what values they want to be discussing and what values they stick to. But in the end, I think, and this relates to my previous point, we need to be thinking how we shape the policy debate. my organization participated in a project called Share Digital Europe, which is an alternative policy vision targeted at European policymakers. Our idea is to look into the future. Our aim is maybe to influence less the current commission, but the one coming up. And this is sort of the ambition I think we should have also with this effort, the Digital Sustainability Forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Radu, Sarah wants to be next.
Hi, I can take the mantle. Thank you for all these comments. Maybe I'll go a little bit. I'll start a little bit high level because I actually used to live abroad approximately 10 years before coming back to the Czech Republic, to my home. And I used to live in the UK. And what actually was interesting from almost like an anthropological perspective was how innovations are handled and how startups and basically new ideas are handled in the West compared to the Visegrad 4, for example. And I found out that a lot of it came down to good PR and a lot of self-confidence that our countries sometimes don't necessarily have, which means that we're actually quite bad at selling the talent that we do have here. And for like obvious reasons, like all to do with, or like most of them to do with the fall of the Iron Curtain as well. A lot of our top brains are actually escaping abroad with the vision of better money, and then they stay there. And what I think is really important in scaling AI in society here is to make sure that people are educated about the talent that we have. And the way to do this is to have a very multidisciplinary approach. And what we discussed on the 22nd of September on the Aspen Roundtable with Microsoft was that what is really lacking is a multidisciplinary education platform. So not only educating people when they're in school and then like they finish school and then they never talk about it again, but actually connecting the state, the commercial sector, the universities, but also high schools to make sure that like what is AI actually gets to the people, and also to be able to translate like what innovations have come out of our community. And I think this community grassroots approach is the thing that is going to build up that healthy self-confidence that we can go and build those unicorns on the market, and that we can like really push forward those innovations and support people psychologically to be able to put themselves forward. And the reason why I'm saying all this is that one of my very good friends who I discuss this a lot with, Tomáš Mikolov, who's one of our top scientists, just a genius brain who's spent 10 years in Microsoft, Google, Facebook. He's come back and he says, we have such talent and it really breaks my heart that we can't sell it properly. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that AI is often misinterpreted about what it actually is the anthropomorphization of the topic itself when we talk about neural networks and intelligence as such, or like even the notion of a robot is very humanoid. And sometimes when I hear these discussions about regulation, it actually scares me because I feel that we're regulating something that doesn't yet quite exist, which is artificial general intelligence, which may be here, or like artificial life, which may be here in 100 years time, 200 years time, it may never be here. But a lot of what AI is right now is a glorified set of analytical, statistical, and mathematical methods for processing data effectively. And I think that, again, it shows the lack of communication sometimes between the highly academic spheres of society and the state, and then just ordinary people. If you said, is the data classifier going to kill us all? Everyone would just laugh at you. But if you say, oh, is the Terminator going to kill us all? That suddenly sounds a lot more poignant. So going back to this multidisciplinary platform for education, there's already efforts that are being made. There's the Faculty of Informatics and Electrotechnical Engineering here in Prague, as well as Charles University, in combination with several ministries like the Ministry of Industry and Trade, the Ministry for Education, but also like independent think tanks like the Aspen Institute, like Prague AI, like Czech Global, that are basically trying to bring all these people around the table and create digestible, scalable educational content that on one hand healthily demystifies artificial intelligence for the general public, but simultaneously plays that PR marketing role where people that would maybe like not be heard about otherwise, or because they'd be doing their research and not really talk about themselves, can actually get out into the world so that we can contribute to the global scene as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, it's hard to add a lot of ideas. We're already, but what surprised me, if I want to start like this, in the Microsoft approach in discussing AI in this digital sustainability forum, was not only, as Iris was saying, the openness to discuss as a company to openly discuss this subject, but also not discussing it through a technical lens, or if you want, so not from technical point of view. So it was a broad approach, although we started very nationally, if you want, around of course, empowering human capital, talents, as Sarah was saying, accelerate economical transformation because it's a huge impact on the society, and also how do you foster innovation that you have in the country or in cities. But more than this, the discussion, and this is the value probably the Aspen Institute Romania brought, and our program is to have this multilateral perspective, multi-stakeholder forum to discuss from various points of view, which to a subject that was quite new or not easy to understand by many of the participants at that moment. So it was a very, very good discussion, starting from understanding AI, but moving forward towards more European, as Alex and Piotr was saying, more a European approach to the regulation part, but not only, but to a network of talent at the European level and international level that can deal with this. Is not something that AI, especially, is not something that it can be treated locally. I don't see the way it works, the way it's conceptualized, if you want, is not something that can be think or thought locally. So we moved very quickly to, and this was probably, there are three elements of our session that were very good. We focused very much on ethics, and we very much on education, and very much on the regulation and legislative barriers towards this. So ready to discuss further on for each one of you of the points, but I believe it was a good idea not only to have this forum, which I congratulate you for this idea, but to have it in a very open format and multi-stakeholder format discussion. I believe it was a valuable thing to learn from each one's experience.
So many of you mentioned the open dialogue, and frankly, it was also for Microsoft very much a wish to learn, because sometimes you think you have, all the answers and all the great ideas, but trying to take a humble approach to see if we could actually, get some good ideas and learn. I think, Iris, you mentioned a quite interesting point in your opening. You mentioned that, there are still a lot of myths around artificial intelligence, and some people just think it's about, self-driving cars and robots walking around. There's still a lot of myths. So I was just curious, what kind of myths do you think there is? The ones that are most important for us to address, or that maybe, or you have discussed in your fora? I see nodding faces. Anyone want to say anything?
Yeah, maybe. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, please, no. Yeah.
Sorry, my Zoom is a little bit delayed. I didn't mean to jump in. I'll be very quick. Yeah, I think the biggest myth is that we are not at the level of artificial general intelligence, because that is how a lot of it is being perceived by the media and by PR. It's that humanization of AI, which is a problematic term in itself. We should be talking probably more about machine learning or symbolic approaches, whether that's the way that we want to go. But just like deconstructing the term itself for people, I think is very important. The second thing that I think is really important is to make people understand where it could be used and how. So to be able to tell them, look, if you don't have proper data and if they're not well labeled, AI is not going to manage miracles. I used to work in Industry 4.0 for quite a long time, and we used to use machine learning methods to do predictive maintenance of expensive machines. So obviously, like in Czech Republic, which is an automotive industry, that was particularly important for the likes of Volkswagen, Skoda Auto, etc. But even in the sales process, you would see like how there's not enough digitalization in the first place. So they have bits of paper and they want you to do machine learning on top of it. And that's just impossible. So that's just the onboarding itself, and just to even explain the structures of the databases and the data flow that they need to have in order for the AI to be successful and to be able to implement it in the first place, that is a massive step. So one of it is demystifying it for the public, but the other is to be demystifying it for the industry. Because I read this terrifying statistic that only like 40% of startups that claim to do AI actually properly do AI. And then there's this lack of trust between all the different parties, between the state, between the public, between the industry, between the academics. And then what happens is a lot of things getting lost in translation, people expecting magic out of these algorithms. And I think that showing it on concrete examples and talking about it and being very transparent, and maybe even having a checklist of how to most effectively digitalize and how AI ready you are. That's a calculator that, for example, Microsoft has that I think is fantastic to show the AI readiness of your company. I think that's going to be incredibly important in busting those myths.
And totally agree. And if I may add to that, I think it is just general human nature that something you are not really aware about, something you don't know, may make you feel a bit afraid. And this is why it is so important that we openly speak about what AI can bring to us, because the myth can be around how much, to what extent it helps us, and to what extent makes us vulnerable, and how it can turn against us, because we could even see movies, and I think it is so much important to have clarity in mind and have a clear have clear and open communication about it, and give honest answers to the questions people may have and decision makers may have. Because let's be honest, even at in companies who, as you said, Sarah, proclaim that they use it, they don't really use it as we believe. So, yeah.
If I can add to this, I'm very happy we're having this conversation about disenchanting a bit this anthropomorphized vision. Whenever I see a news article with a silver robot, I cringe. Unfortunately, stock photo sites are full of them. But I think another topic that we really need to discuss in this context is data governance. Data sounds a lot less interesting than AI, and I don't just mean raising big issues around privacy. I think there's a lot of non-personal data governance, and there are actually very interesting projects that are being done in Europe, and some of them are highlighted also at this event, and not just in Europe, by the way. But I think this is really both an important and exciting field. We're asking questions. Okay, so we know that the data cannot be completely closed up. It's probably not a good idea also to open up everything, though I'm a big fan of the open data model. But in between that is a fascinating conversation about what standards do we set? Can we govern it as a commons, as some type of closed pool resource? What optimizes innovation? What optimizes justice? And I think we're in a moment where, because these machine learning and automated decision-making solutions are not yet so much implemented, we have this window of opportunity to really figure out things and set data governance right. And I find that very important.
Radu, did you want to say something as well?
Yes, you started about the myths, and although we already mentioned some of them, I believe one of the myths we had to vote, and we started talking even in the conversation we have in the forum, is about the future of work. It's about losing jobs. It's about the impact on this economy, and I believe it was a very good conversation, because not only presenting examples of how can be used, and this tackles the unknown part of you know, you're scared because you don't know what that means, but also very much focused on reskilling and how do you go there? How do you prepare the next generation for such a natural way of working with AI? Is not something that they're going to learn. They're going to live with that as a natural process. And also, because I mentioned the local approach, the regulation of not only AI but new technologies and so on it cannot happen locally. It's a global effort around it, and you cannot make a regulation in Bucharest or Romania and another regulation in because people are not stuck with that place. They can move freely over internet and all the places. So these were the myths we discussed a lot, and focus very much on the education part and the reskilling and future of job part, to be honest. So I believe it's a fair and good conversation to have at all levels about it. Not only on AI side, although it's probably the most close to the impact on the future of jobs, but all the other technologies that we can discuss.
I think I will just quickly add to what Sarah said. I think one of the topic that we tried to demystify was actually the definition of AI. I think on our first forum we came up to the idea we have to to start discussion of what we are talking about, because some of the guys in the forum were saying that RPA, robotic process automation, because there is a robotic word in that, it's a AI, or somebody was using, hey, what does machine learning means? So because we invited people from academia, but not from, I would say, from mathematical computer science lectures, but also from society, so even arts, etc. Then they were curious what it is, because they have something in mind. And that was, by the way, our lessons learned, that for the next meetings that we're gonna have during the DSF, we have to prepare some backgrounders. We did that for the first meeting, but we never think we have to define the AI. What is AI, right? So that's one thing we have to demystify. That was mentioned by Sarah about the artificial general intelligence, what it could do, what it can't do at the moment. That was one thing that we had to demystify. That was the lesson learned. We need to bring definitions to the table. The other was a topic that was brought by civil societies, which is that AI could be 100% objective. So we were discussing that, hey, it's not objective, it's based on the data and the algorithm. So we were talking about how to make AI less biased, right? Because we need to bring more data, create algorithm which treat people much more equally, for example, right? So that was a broad topic, how AI could not discriminate the society as a whole, or promote, I don't know, men, for example, or white men, right? That was a huge discussion in Poland also. So that was also the myth that we have to demystify. On top of that, you already mentioned like data by Alec or any of you. So I try to bring the others, which, let's say, was not, from my perspective, so much underlined. So thank you.
Before we continue, I just want to say to the attendees that are listening in that if you have a question, you have the opportunity to put a question. So we're happy to take it up. I will monitor which questions comes in. It's very interesting that many of you have mentioned, that this can never be just a local thing. It has to be brought on a European level to really, matter. And we actually have discussed with some of you that it could be maybe an option, and maybe in the near future to lift this up on a European level and kind of bring some of the best ideas from the local fora, maybe do some kind of white paper or report, and then invite for a European roundtable at Brussels, invite somebody from the Commission, invite, those of you who have been in the local, and then have like, a European dialogue. So this is just one idea we can discuss for the future, but that would be one way to integrate the EU level. Many of you have talked about education, and I think, Sarah, that your idea and your talk about this, really integrated educational platform, lifelong kind of learning. I was just curious if you could put a little bit more words on that and maybe get some comments from the rest of the panel.
Definitely, yeah. So it's obviously very difficult to create such a platform purely because of the sharing of data and things like GDPR. So from a technological perspective, it might not be that difficult, but that's actually something before I go into the details of this, just one quick comment I wanted to make, that I used to work a lot in digital politics, and I was there during the era of when GDPR was coming in. And the reason it was so difficult is that on one hand, yes, it was fantastic that it started a very fruitful discussion, but on the other hand, because it wasn't really well mapped out and well known how exactly the data flows work. And on one hand, you didn't want to restrict the market too much, but on the other hand, you didn't want to just like leave it be completely. What existed or started existing is a lot of gray areas that suddenly like we didn't know whether we can do opt-in email campaigns, although those people were like completely bought in and they wanted to participate. So there was a lot of gray areas, and there still are, where it led to a fair bit of confusion. And I understand that we need to start somewhere. With AI, what I see as a huge threat is that if we're regulating something that doesn't exist, i.e., if I'm being like dramatic, terminators that will kill us all, or like automated decision making off AGI that isn't really there, or we give Sophia the robot a nationality, and then we start discussing about whether she's got the rights to go have a lunch break and things like that. Obviously, I'm being facetious, but what we risk is really stagnating the degree of innovation and research. And then we'll never catch up with the likes of China and America. So that is just something that if we do it on a federal level, we have to be really careful about what we regulate, and that we regulate something sensible, which in my opinion is just like a GDPR 2.0 version, like a sensible collection of data rather than the creation of the subsequent algorithms. But sorry, that's just a quick side note. The idea of the platform is that we want some dynamic way for to create a community. Again, it's something that in America is being done really well, that people build grassroots communities and they have this kind of knowledge sharing, and it's a bottom-up approach rather than a top-down of the ministry and C, and then that taking 10 years to trickle down to the curriculum and then taking another generation before it's implemented in schools. And I think that COVID is a great opportunity to create this meta university, this kind of almost marketplace for information and sharing information and content, but also for people to be able to trade off skills with each other. So if someone's a specialist in, say, machine learning or natural language processing, and there might be a research opportunity for them in a university, or they need his or her expertise in the Ministry of Industry to form policy. Basically, the Dutch model, where you have this triumvirate of the state, the private sector, and the academic sector, and they can all feed from each other in this symbiosis. That's what we would like to create, this cloud community of inspiration and lifelong education that doesn't have the barrier of being too, like, elitist or too complicated, or like very user-friendly. And we're definitely kind of oscillating around that, and there's a few ideas about how to make that happen. Hope that helps.
In terms of education, what I would like to add that I think it is not only Hungary, but in many countries that there is a lot of discussion going on, what we expect from the education. And I think it has changed drastically in the past decades, just because our labor market changed so much. So if we just look at the digital part, technology develops much quicker than we can prepare our teachers and what we can prepare the curriculum. And this is why it is so important that companies like Microsoft are taking leadership role in bringing the knowledge and the technology into the schools. The question is how to really make it scalable, because it is not the role of the companies and the investors to teach the future generation, but I think it is really the whole society who has to define what we expect from the schools to how we want our children to be developed. And there are some countries who have already found good answers. I think we are still in the search phase. And it is about the formal education part. And the other question is, what is happening to, for example, to my generation and to the generation who is already in the labor market, how we prepare us and how we prepare them, and what is the role of the individual and what is the role of the company and who can help, and how we can really motivate people to have an inherent need for lifelong learning. Because they have to understand that if it is not happening, they are going to just lagging behind. So I think it is not only the education itself, but it is a moral and social and ethical question that all players have a big role to play.
Can I add to this? So I agree about the importance of lifelong learning, and I think AI is both a very good case to discuss this and just one of many. And I want to note, by the way, that there is some very specific knowledge needed. But at the same time, when I read about the need for AI curriculum, I cannot stop thinking we're having just a conversation about digital skills. You need to understand basic programming, you need to understand math. So let's not put that aside. We're building on a certain conversation that we've been having for 20 years or more. I've been in it for around 20, probably it goes on for more. But what I want to say is that I think relate to the current moment, and this might be a bit controversial. So we don't talk a lot about timeframes today. This is hard to do, but it's quite realistic to assume the timeframe for the current crisis is more than until the end of this year. And this means there is a space of challenge, but also a space of opportunity for education. And the controversial thing I want to say is that in our region, I think the school systems and higher education systems as such will not really manage to fully deal with this challenge. Remote education has been sort of the dream, a big part of the idea of digital education. Here we are in it. And Piotr's foundation did a very interesting study on attitudes of Poles, where year to year from last year, the interest in doing remote education as something interesting and important fell from 70% to 50%, as the only measure that fell down when people are asked, what do you want to do with technology? And I think that's telling. They say it because they experienced it, and the experience, unfortunately, is bad. We need good experience with remote education. And I think the actors who can step in are the non-traditional actors who are in the lifelong learning system. So basically companies, non-governmental organizations, educational startups, you name it, anyone who's not yet in the system. If I was to name probably the second biggest educational outfit alongside the educational systems, I would say it's YouTube. I think almost everyone here learned something from a YouTube video, but it's unstructured and it's very hard to do if you're not a very focused learner. So we need someone who can package this into a meaningful experience. There's a lot of opportunity to do it in a more just way. For instance, solve geographical challenges from people living outside of, major cities, or people living far away from the top experts. But we need to find ways how to scale it, how to deal with well-being of people sitting for a long time in front of a camera. I think it's a fascinating educational mission that we can pursue.
Yeah, I will just one thing add what Alex said exactly. Actually, two. One is that I totally agree. I mean, it came out in our survey that we did in Poland. We are doing the survey every year. We ask the society many questions about digitalization and how they see the tech. And actually, yes, there was a 20% drop in the e-learning, how they see it, because everyone was dreaming. There was like a fantasy it's gonna be great, but at the end we end up with like 3 kids in your small apartment. 2 of them are not having a laptop, for example, etc. And the teachers, especially teachers, were not ready in Poland to use the digital skills, right? Because there was no trainings. Microsoft did a tremendous good job. I think the same as Google, probably in Poland at least, offering Teams for free. That is, that saved us. Really, frankly speaking, that saved us in Poland. But nevertheless, there are some traumatic, I would say, lessons coming from this chaotic introduction of e-learning. That's going to be really tough for us in the future to change the perspective of digital learning, because most of the people will hear, hey, e-learning, when my kids was, like I had to teach my kids because the teacher were not present, right? So that's the main challenge. But I want to bring it to the attention what Alec also said, that I believe that companies like LinkedIn, they have tremendous power. I think they're even thinking about that, bringing their certification, mass market education to the people, offering like LinkedIn University certificates. I heard also, I think, about Google making like smart trainings. And due to digital learning, there will be a shorter distance to the best universities, best lecturers. But what I'm trying to underline, we just launched 2 days ago, great, very famous e-learning free course, Elements of AI, which came up from Finland. We together with Jagiellonian University, we launched that course in Poland. So we are leading the AI challenge in Poland. And why I'm bringing this to your attention, because that's the NGOs, I mean NGOs, that's the Reactor plus the University of Helsinki, and together globally with help from European Union, we reach 500,000 people already, which will learn the basic of AI. And that's our also mission, to teach the society so it will not be afraid of the machines, because we all aware of the media sector, which create interesting films, series, but they present AI as a Terminator, and there are no funny stories with AI. Maybe I know 2 of them, but most of the stories is about killing. That was our mission, by the way, as an NGO, to talk with the event conferences, like, hey, stop presenting the AI as a Terminator, like a robot. It's not that kind, because you are afraid, you're scaring people. It's not true, right? So that's with education. There's a lot to do with e-learning, changing curriculum, like Alex said, digital skills. We are still missing them in Poland. And I believe doing something for the whole society. So long life learning is a must, especially when we talk about future of work. So sorry for long talk, but I try to.
Interesting, and I think AI is not something big, dangerous that is coming. AI is actually already here. It's we use it every day in automatic translation. In our cars. I mean, it's just already a part of our society in many ways. So looks like we have very active audience with us today. So I'll just take a few questions here. It seems like maybe somebody could be interested in also making a DSF in their country or so. There's one question here. Who was interested in your countries in discussing topics under the DSF format? Did you have issues to invite participants, and who was most interested in being part of this? Who wants to?
So maybe very briefly, I would say from my perspective, of course, it came from us. Me and Alec and Microsoft were thinking who to invite. But I must say, when I said we're going to discuss the AI, many concepts like where we are in Poland, the state of AI, what is AI, the policies, then actually of course, we had a tremendous feedback. Like we invited, I think, 35 person, a very selected one, like policymakers, like experts, and out of 35, we get more than 25. They wanted to be in our roundtable. So I think the lessons learned is that you have to carefully think about who to invite, who have a knowledge, and to have a broad audience, right? Because we were looking for to have a broad view, broad perspective. In terms of issues, I think we didn't encounter any issues because we also have a very good rule in terms of Chatham House, because some of the people were asking, hey, is it going to be recorded? Will it gonna be underlined that somebody from public government said this? Especially people from public institutions were asking whether if I criticize something, like a clear statement, will it be said that I said it publicly? And I said no, it's they're gonna be a Chatham House rules. We don't put people who said what. We want to have a just a knowledge compilation of knowledge that we have what should be do. So we didn't have the issues. We only had questions about the linkage between the your name, job, etc., to the wording, to the what he or she said, right?
We had the very same experience that we have put together the list of invitees with Microsoft, and we received very positive answers. So basically everybody wanted to participate, and those who didn't come, they didn't come because the timing didn't fit their schedule. And as Peter said, we also invited people, other companies, even competitors of Microsoft, and representatives of the civil society, government agency representatives, academia. And for us, it really showed that it is a topic which we will have to keep high on the agenda, because the interest was really high.
Sorry to jump in. Same in our case. I mean, we started the conversation last year before the pandemics, but the main actors, we were discussing, of course, with Microsoft together with Aspen to put together this program. The main actors to push for the agenda was probably the business sector, because they needed like a discussion, of course, but the lack of human resource in this field is one of their concerns. But the most active in the conversation were the public sector and the academia, talking about not only AI but sustainability and technology as a whole. Coming back to that, just an interesting example of the discussion and what followed. It's on education, for example. We discussed about the need to change the model of education, because it's a change in the way people learn in a digital environment. So, which they for especially for the young people, they became kind of a habit for them to use this environment. So it's unnatural to think in an old model that people should come in the same place and be fed with the same information, one size fits all, and people will learn from that. So in a world where personal experience and personalized experience it's key. Also attention span, it's kind of decreasing over time. It's hard to imagine. So we discussed about how technology and AI can change the model of education. This was in November and over December last year, I remember. And funny enough, if I may say so, the pandemic came, and all the discussion not became like a theoretical discussion, but a hands-on discussion. How do we change the model now, not in 5 years or 10 years time? So I believe, and we receive good feedback then and after that from the public institution representatives that came. I know from our experience that they came to us again a few months after to reconnect some of the ideas and to talk about it, especially on this educational part. But I believe also it's not something, as you said, AI is not something that is going to come. It's here already, and you are using it every day without knowing that you are using it. These were also part of the lesson learned in the forum. Thanks.
So time is running. I think I'm gonna take another question, and then I'm gonna ask you on the panel if there's maybe something that you would like to discuss in this remaining time. So it's the word will be free. But I think there's a very nice question here that has to do with the recommendations from the digital sustainability forums in your countries. How were these recommendations processed in your countries? Did you share it with the government? How did they, take it? I think there was it you, Piotr, who said that that in Poland the government had actually integrated some of the recommendations in?
Yes. So very briefly, first of all, we invited policymakers from the government to our roundtable to be part of that. And like I said, one of the reasons they joined is that there was a Chatham House rule, so no one took notice whoever said what, but we wanted to have the best policy. We invited several ministries, I would say, not only one, but several, because as you know, AI is a broad topic. So when we actually finished the first draft of the materials, because we had several of that kind of roundtables, then every time we send them also to policymakers to get their feedback, to include them in the discussion, and the final documents were every time sent. We also set up meetings to discuss the findings with the government. And yes, some of the findings were included in the policy of building AI in Poland. Of course, not all of them. That's a different, I would say, different story. But at least some of them were included, and they're gonna be implemented. But the main lessons learned from here is that bring the government at the beginning of a discussion so they could be part of it. Show the openness of the every aspect they want to raise, like open data, whatever they bring, just try to discuss every topic, and be transparent on the data, because when we make something like show how many IT or AI scientists do we have in Poland, etc., we always put a source like Eurostat, wherever, which we use, how we came up to the conclusion, etc. That was, I think, one of the key aspects. Be transparent and bring everyone to the table, including government.
Just to add to that, in Hungary, we also invited representatives of government agencies, so they have been in part of the discussion from the very beginning. And we have a very useful tool. Every year we issue a set of recommendations, not only in the area of AI or digitalization, but in the 4 advocacy areas we work on: the business climate, the business environment, the competitive workforce, innovation, and digitalization. So it is a very good tool to include all the outcomes of the discussion in the Digital Sustainability Forum. So actually we are now in the process of collecting all the recommendations, and we are pulling them together. And at the very beginning of each year, we are sending it to the Prime Minister, to all the ministers and all the state secretaries whose area is impacted by the recommendations. Then it becomes a very important document. MCHEM is already known by the recommendation pack, so they are expecting it somehow. And then it becomes a very important base for discussion during the year to go through with the decision makers and use each and every forum to raise the topics and talk about. So this is what is basically happening now, and this is how we channel all the messages and recommendations to our government partners.
Very nice. Anyone else wants to?
I will jump in. Yeah, well, fortunately enough, we had this this conversation on DSF on a very interesting context. I mean, Romania was preparing the AI strategy at that moment, so the discussion was very good around how this the strategy should look like, and many of the points were already taken into consideration by the government. Unfortunately, the strategy isn't adopted by the government yet, but we have, I believe it was a good starting conversation at that moment for that particular part. So this is part of the results of the discussion there. More than that, I believe what we continued in partnership with Microsoft at the Aspen Technology and Society program, we were working on creating some policy outlines for the digital transformation in Romania. So also part of the discussion was continued there. So I believe was a good outcome, and hope it answered the questions. Thank you.
I wanted to ask if there's anybody who has a question, maybe from for another panelist, something that you heard, something that they said that you have, you know, a question, a comment. We have 10 minutes left, so not a lot. So I want to make sure that everyone had the chance to.
I would actually rather ask a question about the future, which means, you know, not only about the plans on the DSF that you have in your countries or different topics, for example, picking up different topics, or maybe following up on the implementation of public policies, but also, you know, how you see the future in terms of data discussion. Should we, for example, like at IGF, should we all meet together at the Brussels, for example, or any other forum where you could also bring not only CEE region, but maybe also other region to the table. So I'm really curious how you see that on those two topics. Like, I know they are broad. One is the future, the other is Brussels, let's say. So maybe Alec mentioned the Brussels. So.
I'm happy to start. Yes, I also will need to apologize. I will need to leave. I have another session starting in a few minutes, so maybe I'll comment and then disappear. I'm sorry about that. So I agree that that's one practical thing for the future. I would agree. It makes sense, as I already mentioned, to discuss this at European level. And I think this broad input from a multi-stakeholder dialogue from across countries would be very well received. And I think it's a truism, and we don't even need to discuss that AI needs to be cross-national, right? Yes, national strategies are important, but really we need a shared approach. But regarding the future, I think there are some interesting things to do. I think it would be good to explore where we need to go beyond some of the framings that are by now accepted. I think, you know, some ideas around, for instance, ethical AI as a framework. And again, the European level has done a lot of work to promote it. There's probably not much to discuss there. We can only confirm that there's probably a lack of criticism of this thinking, but I'm sure there are some issues that could be developed further, and it would be interesting to see what methods we could use to work on this further. I'm personally very interested, for instance, in sort of a bit more in-depth co-design exercises, which do take more time, and in practical terms, you know, would need to be designed differently. We know that you know, we're working with, for instance, very really busy people, right? And something that works to get an initial set of ideas would not work. To do more in-depth work, maybe you would need to target someone else than the sort of high-level stakeholders. I think there's, for instance, very interesting work to be doing with emerging experts, you know, younger people, tech experts, also young policy experts. I know this is important for IGF. So this is something I would be very happy if this formula also explored explore these sort of dive-ins. Future-oriented, you know, also probably really interesting methodologies we could use to explore what the future holds. And now I will excuse myself. I'm very sorry. Thank you for this interesting conversation. Bye-bye.
Bye. Any more?
If I may jump, yeah. Well, very good question, Piotr. And I see two ideas, if you want, and we can work on the same approach on mapping the AI at the country level. Who are the players? Who are the big or small companies, but not only academia? Who are the centers to specialize people and so on? Should be done as an exercise for at the European level, in my opinion. This would give a good image of what's happening, of course. But the conversation should be more often and more broad and inviting more and more people talking about that. I remember, and I believe you all remember the GDPR moment, and it was like silent, then something that was exploding in the last month. So let's not follow the same pattern. Let's increase the conversation and the pressure on this. I believe it would be a good thing. And also together with Sarah, but with all of you, of course, I would very much like to explore the idea of education, but changing the models, not only using AI, but also for AI, with AI, and so on. So yeah, it would be a great pleasure to contribute. Thank you so much. That's my 2 cents on it.
And maybe, by the way, thank you so much for mentioning that. Maybe my 2 cents very quickly is that it's been disheartening sometimes that the effort to educate people and to bring AI to the forefront in a sensible, scalable way so that we don't go through another AI winter. We've got the processing power now. We've got so many like users of AI that are actually relatively simple, or like they seem simple, but they're making our lives so much better every day without us realizing, whether that's a spam filter or whether that's like a suggested route or like a suggested shopping list or recommendations online, like through deep learning recommendation engines. So like very, very simple things from like watching YouTube to doing your weekly shopping can be powered by machine learning. And now imagine if we took that to the sphere of education, of healthcare, predicting how pandemics are going to be evolving, digitalizing like healthcare and actually putting things from paper into a computer. Something as simple as that could really make our lives a lot easier. Or in my case, filing taxes, which always takes me about like 5 years of my life away mentally. And I think that the whole relationship between it's not just artificially putting together like the academic sector, the state, and the people. It's actually redefining how a nation state functions, because the relationship between an individual and the state is going to fundamentally change thanks to these technologies. And we need to have very open discussions and not just like protect the status quo, but actually admit that the world is changing and that's fine. And we need to shepherd that world into this new system. And the sad thing has been, though, that this effort has been here for a really long time. And often there has been like a new like innovation effort or education effort. People take photos. There's a lot of PR about it. It looks great. And within 6 months, it dies because it doesn't have content, or people are not engaged, or the community just doesn't really form about it. And I think one of the reasons is that doing something multidisciplinary is really important, but it's then also really important to basically like who's going to pay for it and who's going to look after it. And the various grants that are often being used for this kind of thing are not often like a long-term sustainable thing. Also, there's this like schizophrenia of do we do it on a federal European level or on a local level? So like all these questions I think need to really be spoken about and difficult conversations to be had. And then it'd be such a shame for the group of us that are here, which I think all basically have the same aim. I would love to keep talking and I'd love to keep fostering this because we've got a unique opportunity. And I think that with the help of Microsoft and Aspen, we can really take the responsibility for this and drive it forward. And I really look forward to the next few years, because I think a lot of changes are going to happen, a lot of exciting changes that are going to make people's lives better. So thank you very much.
Anyone else has a closing remark before I finish off? I think we covered a lot of really, really interesting topics. I think one topic that, a lot of more topics we could have discussed. I think also, the education that we talked about and the ethics, there's also maybe a need for more ethical courses in our education system. As you know, ethics will become more important than ever when machines start acting like human beings. So thank you very much, everyone. I really enjoyed this time with you. I just feel how I miss these conversations that you have when you're on a conference. And I think we had really a nice conversation here. Thank you so much, everyone. And hope that I can we can meet maybe in Brussels to bring this on a European level and collect all your great ideas and outcomes. So thank you so much, and hopefully that can then be an in-person meeting. That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stay healthy.
Thank you, everyone.
Very much.
Yeah,
Thanks.
great.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.